see who's here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this informational. At this time, I'm going to turn everything over to our city manager, John Solomon. He has a brief presentation, and then we'll take comment.
Thank you, Mayor. The format tonight will be a little different than our informational. Normally, the informational is information that's passed on to the council, and the citizens can observe, but normally there's not comment. Well, we're going to change that a little bit tonight. After the city makes a brief presentation, and I'm going to introduce the program managers for each project that has been listed tentatively. Then whatever time is left will be open to the citizens to make suggestions, comments, etc. All of this will wind up at 7:30 when the council will initiate their regular meeting. So with that, let me get started. I have a brief presentation on the American Rescue Plan, and what I want to concentrate on more is what are the parameters for the program. In other words, what makes a project eligible and another project not eligible. So I will give, in a very concise way, some of the basic tenets of the plan. Now, the plan is 166 pages long, so with 5 slides, you're not going to get too much detail. But I think you'll get the idea of what's available and what's not. By now, we all know that the American Rescue Plan will deliver about $350 billion to local, territorial, and tribal governments to respond to the coronavirus emergency and bring back jobs. The funding objectives. It's to support urgent COVID-19 responses and to decrease the spread of the virus and bring the pandemic under control. Now, it shows you how much things have changed. When I did this presentation in the beginning of July, I was looking at this and say, well, that's kind of over with, right? We're not wearing masks anymore, and we're doing everything right. Now I look at that and I say, wow, I'm hopeful that we're gonna have to need some of the money to keep on doing that, and we are. To keep order in the city hall, make sure everybody wears a mask. We have police out there again. That costs money, and so we're now spending money that we didn't think we would be spending. It's a key one: to replace lost public sector revenue to strengthen and support vital services and help retain jobs. So as much as this is a health program to ensure people's health and recovery, it's also a jobs program to address the massive amounts of dislocation that occurred during and now during the pandemic. Support immediate economic stabilization for households and businesses. A lot of what Leanne will be talking tonight will be the part about economic stabilization for households. Some of the rest will be economic stabilization for businesses, and I might add nonprofits, arts, things like that. Finally, and this is more pertinent than ever, address systematic public health and economic challenges that have continued to contribute to the unequal impact of the pandemic. Well, you know, the council just passed a resolution the last few weeks that really gets into that whole area. Systematic public health challenges, unequal impact. So that's the whole area that they talked about in the resolution that was passed. So we'll be addressing that. And we started addressing that even before the resolution. So we've got a little bit of a jump on it. There are some that are very straightforward. Chris LaRose likes that. They're nice and straightforward. Water and sewer is specifically mentioned in the program, and you can make necessary investments with clean water, wastewater, stormwater infrastructure. We have some investment in that, about $800,000. In the second and third phase of this, we will probably be including more investment from NPU. Of course, it's got to conform with EPA project categories. So no matter what, even though the funding is coming from a different source, it still has to be in conformance. This is a big one. Respond to harms to workers, families, small businesses, impacted industries, and the public sector. A lot of what you see tonight responds to that particular item in different ways. Delivers assistance to workers and families, supports small businesses, speeds the recovery of impacted industries, and then, of course, rebuilds public sector capacity. We are going to be responding to the negative impacts of the COVID pandemic, including assistance to households, again, small businesses, nonprofits, as well as affected industries, and this is key, such as tourism, travel, and hospitality. B, providing governmental services previously cut due to pandemic-related revenue shortfalls. There's a couple of positions that are in there now. There's the police department concentration, which addresses some of that. And then finally, making needed investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. The first is a project that we're going to be looking at is Umpkus Leaf, and we have a team effort here. We have Patrick and Deanna, who's going to come up and give a couple of minutes of just talking about what their input on the project's going to be. Ready?
Sure.
We have the Public Works Director and the Director of Planning and Development. They both have a combination of that. Here, I'm going to give you this one, and you can, it's all ready to go.
Okay, I'm Pat Mclaughlin.
Deanna Rose, Director of Planning.
And go ahead.
We're going to partner on this project because it really relates to both of our departments. There's a lot of design elements in it. This is the master plan. If people haven't seen it, this is the Umpkus Leaf Heritage Park. This was done a couple of years ago. We had a consultant, Malone and McBroom, that worked with the city to create this. We also went out and had several different public meetings about it to get in, public comment about all the different amenities on the site. And we feel like it's a really terrific plan for this Heritage Park. It's a very significant historical site to the city and to the Mohegan tribe. And we feel that this is really a tourism spot that is so important to the city. People don't know it's here, even some people who live here, but other people travel specifically to Norwich to see this site. And right now, it is in a transition. The city has spent quite a bit of money on doing environmental assessment there and remediation. There was originally a brick building that was a mill, and then there was also a granite mill, and we did assessment and worked with the State Historic Preservation Office to look at those viability of reusing these buildings and their historical significance to the site. The main historical significance to the site really is the native history there and the events that happened on that site. So the removal of the brick building came down a couple of years ago, and we were able to use grant funds with that. And then we have received additional grant funds to work on starting the park improvements. And if you went down there now, you would see that the granite mill has been taken down quite a bit, but we have got approval from the State Historic Preservation Office to create a ruin concept. So you will be able to walk through this building, still have a magnitude of what the architecture was there for this mill, and you'll be able to get to the lower portion of this site. Right now, the site is a construction yard, basically, and it is not usable as a park right now because of the different work that's happening there. But this master plan is really a guide for the city of how we should make this park come to life and to really have those elements so people can appreciate what happened on this site, the historic waterfall that's there, the Yantic River, and so at this point, all those wonderful ideas have been put into this document, so it really transitions from a planning project to a public works project, and Pat, being the director of public works, would take the lead on making sure that all the different amenities that are shown on this plan are incorporated into the design.
Yeah, and so right now, the work that's going on now should be done in the next 3 or 4 months. That's basically the stabilization of the granite mill building itself. And then we will proceed with we're gonna need to hire a designer to put the conceptual plan into construction documents. It'll go out to bid, and then the park features will be constructed. Some of the features will be scenic overlooks, a story circle down below, like a mini amphitheater kind of thing, site lighting, landscaping, some retaining walls, restoration on the historic fence.
It's listed up there.
Okay, the restroom facility and those kind of things.
There's also trails there, there's landscape improvements, and there's an associated ravine that's off of Satan Street that actually is an access way down to the historic Uncas Leap site, and it's also a very historic site. It's right adjacent to the Mohegan burial ground. So we want to make sure that we protect that, and we do it in such a respectful way that we want the stairs that were there. The stairs were from the 19th century that people were using those stairs, and they're in really bad disrepair, but people unfortunately are still sneaking down and using them. So we want to, again, provide that connection through, but a safe and attractive way without doing too much disturbance, obviously, to that historic ravine. So we really think this is an exciting project. It's definitely a tourism initiative, and it will bring people into the city, and we have very successful historic walks in the city, and if you've ever gone on any of those Norwich walks, you might go on to the Uncas Leap one, which is just an amazing one. So if you haven't done it, go on it. But unfortunately, right now, again, the Uncas Leap site is a construction project, and we have been using grant funds up to this point to do as much work as we can, but we're at the point now that this money would really help us to complete this really important heritage park in the city.
Okay, thank you. Pat's going to stay up here for the next project, and that's the Browning Road water main.
Okay, the Browning Road water main is a project to extend water from Weekus Road, Atrabando Road, around the corner, up Weekus by the Little League field, and up to the lower part of Browning Road near the landfill, the closed landfill, just to ensure that we have a safe drinking water supply up in that area over the next, in perpetuity. It's about 1,200-foot extension, and it'll be a combination of 8-inch and smaller pipe. The second half of it will be a smaller diameter pipe, 2-inch pipe, so the water it gets stagnant if the pipe is too large. So that's why a portion of it is going to be smaller diameter pipe.
It's a very straightforward project.
It's covered under, it's definitely clear that it's, water infrastructure is one of the categories.
Right. The next project and program is Leanne, and Leanne Gomes is now, that should be ready.
Okay. Okay, so Norwich Human Services, as you know, encompasses the basic needs section, the recreation department, the senior center, and youth and family services. And we're doing a lot of things to improve life for all of our residents here in Norwich. The basic needs program will encompass a lot of things that will help our families recover from COVID. We have things such as mental health and physical health improvements. We're looking to get physical health into communities. We'll be doing RFPs for that, to contract with maybe the FQHCs or other health entities to get services right to communities. We have a lot of basic needs things, including rent, shelter diversion, utility assistance, shallow rent subsidies for people whose incomes are lower now, broadband help, laptop help, child care subsidies for people, a really robust program to get families back on their feet and to address the ALIS households, the really low-income, hardworking people who just don't earn enough money to make it. We're doing a job training program in partnership with Three Rivers Community College and really focusing on bringing people's skills up so they can earn more money, and a youth internship program where we'll be hiring youth to get them in the world of work too. And that's about it for the basic needs program. Under the recreation program, we have been tentatively proposed to receive money for the tennis courts, a new playscape in Greenville, a splash pad, and more money for Jenkins Park. And Carolyn is here, and the great job that Night Flight is doing. We want to do some improvements there, maybe a new court there. We also are hoping, Alderman Darrell Wilson proposed money for community development or neighborhood development, and we really want to partner on that and get into the neighborhoods. We're proposing to hire engagement specialists that, again, will do rec programming and mental health and youth programming in neighborhoods. I think it's really hard for some families to get up to, like the rec building, for example, so we want to do activities in their neighborhoods. We, because we will be improving so many fields and facilities, we are going to need another facility maintainer. And one of the things that Cheryl and I have been thinking about for a long time is to have a master plan for recreation so that we do things systematically and we improve things systematically in our town, and we know what needs to be done first. There's a lot of other things that we are proposing, but we know that this funding goes on for a couple more years, and we're hoping to continue to improve our fields and facilities here in Norwich. Just a last comment, the whole racial equity and racism as a public health hazard, those community engagement specialists would be working in neighborhoods on those issues too.
Thank you. The next is, thank you, Leanne. Kevin, that's, the mic is the hot mic right there.
Thanks,
The next program is the Norwich Community Development Corporation. There's $2 million allocated. We have Kevin Brown, the president of NCDC here, and he's going to go over briefly some of the aspects.
Thank you, John. So the mission of the Norwich Community Development Corporation is to sustain business, revitalize Norwich, and attract new businesses, all in the effort to increase the economy of the region. That's all pre-pandemic. That's without American Rescue Plan dollars. Many of you are probably familiar with a program called the Downtown Bond Program that was implemented starting in 2010, 2011. It ran for 10 years. There were $3.38 million that ran through that program to do the very things that we're going to talk about doing here with the American Rescue Plan. It operated through three arms: code correction, which helped new or young business owners reduce the burden of bringing an old building up to par in terms of more modern code that didn't exist at the time that the building was built. Excuse me. There was a rent rebate program, release rebate program, which allowed young business owners to get a start and not have to worry about the burden of that startup phase before they actually could be up and running and profitable. And so for a period of 3, 5, 7, or 10 years, business plan dependent, it would take some of the burden of that increased lease off the plate as they were working through their P&L. And then finally, there was a loan repayment program, also intended to provide working capital to help those businesses get up and moving and help them find their way. Now, again, those were programs that were proactively put into place that went on for 10 years. And as was reported to this council back in November, long before I got here, and I know there's been some concern or question about it, were there results? And this council took a report from the past president that said that over the course of that 10 years, vacancy on storefronts moved from 57% to 78%. The net number of businesses gained over that decade was about 41, with some highs and lows with a number of other factors in play, but about 41 new businesses were put into action through that. And the net revenue increase to the city through a combination of both property taxes and utilities was about $4 million. And so for that $3.38 million that the city bonded, there was about a 7 times return on private dollars that were invested. About $25 million in private dollars were matched and invested. So you can see that there was a positive impact. The idea behind the use of these ARP funds is to simply restock the till and execute the same program. Only $2 million, I say only in relation to the 3.38 that were spent before, but we've got a much faster clock that we've got to execute on. We will likely institute this vanilla box program that you see written up there, which is not only to do code correction, but also improve the facility and again, take the burden off both the landlord and the new business owner to have a well-placed facility to move a new business into. So that's the long and the short of what we're doing.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Let's hand off now. Actually, I'm going to handle this one myself, so we'll just... We do have the executive director of Habitat, and do you have a brief presentation you'd like to make? Yeah. Okay.
This is Jeff Taylor.
Okay. Why don't you introduce yourself, Jeff? That's there's the mic.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jeffrey Taylor. I'm the Director of Development at Habitat for Humanity of Eastern Connecticut. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of our organization for those who may not be super familiar. Habitat for Humanity of Eastern Connecticut is a nonprofit, affordable housing organization, and our mission is to build a world where everybody has a decent place to live. And we do this by finding hardworking, low-income families who are interested in home ownership and providing them with 30 hours of financial coaching and first-time home ownership training, and asking them to invest hundreds of hours in sweat equity to help build their homes and the homes of other Habitat families. These families agree to purchase the homes from our organization and to pay an affordable mortgage back over about 30 years. The average monthly mortgage payment, inclusive of escrow, is about $700 a month for our homeowners. Habitat for Humanity of Eastern Connecticut is in its 34th year of operating, and to date we've completed 98 homes across our service area, which is comprised of New London County, Windham County, and Southern Talon County. We receive funds from various foundations, businesses, government agencies and programs, individual donors, and from the proceeds of our Habitat for Humanity restores, which are located in Waterford and Plainfield. This past year, our restores achieved $1 million in sales during the pandemic, which is a record high for our organization. In terms of our investment for the city of Norwich, we've completed 13 housing units over the years, and 10 are currently in various stages of development in the Greenville section of the city. 11 of these homes were extensive rehabilitations of existing structures, and the other 2, plus the 10 that are currently in development, are all new construction. We're delighted to be building our largest cluster development to date in the Greenville neighborhood of Norwich, which will result in 12 new homes in this neighborhood. So far, we've completed 2 on Golden Street, and each are occupied currently by a Habitat family. We're grateful to be considered for funding to help finish this cluster development on the Marjorie, Sylvester, and Lower Street block, And we're excited for the opportunity to expand our investment in Norwich to include 7 additional rehabilitations for properties that are currently owned by the city of Norwich.
Okay, thank you. Now, the key to this is that we have properties that we acquire through various means, tax foreclosures, things like that. And using their expertise, I think we can get those properties rehabbed at a much more reasonable cost. Instead of just selling them as is, these properties will be able to sell them as an improvement, so we can continue the program, and not only that, improve the neighborhood at the same time. So we think it gets a couple of different, angles. Oops, I'm going backwards. Never go backwards. Arts and culture. We have Wendy Burring. Are you going to? And we'll have to make it pretty brief because I want to give a lot of time for the citizens to have their input.
I'll make it simple. So in Connecticut, there's been $2.4 billion in losses in the arts and cultural sector. 56% of creative workers were made unemployed by COVID, and that's what we're going to try to help bring back here in Norwich. Our plan for the money is a portion of it, the largest portion of it, will actually not be prescriptive by us, but we'll be asking the organizations to tell us what they need in order for them to tell us how we can best help them. We will require collaboration, we'll require a lens of relevance, equity, accessibility, diversity, and inclusion in all of the work that we do. But our plan is to largely re-grant that money back out, have multiple partners work on projects, and think about how they can collaborate, accelerate recovery, and think innovatively about how they could do work moving forward for the long term. Another portion of the money will be used to actually have a part-time coordinator that will be dedicated to help these organizations both collaborate, think innovatively, bring in best practices, work with us in the grants and the sub-granting, and really help to also teach and train around that work around equity and inclusion moving forward. A lot of our strategic plan goals are based on a 2015 plan we did early back with NCDC in 2015, largely with Jason Midson and myself and many others, to develop a plan that was written down but never actually implemented due to a lack of a person with capacity to actually implement that plan. So that's part of our work as well. But most of it's going to go right back into projects and those 4 strategic plan goals.
Thank you. And I appreciate this collaboration. There's a lot of worthy organizations, and we think that Wendy will be able to put some organization into getting the most needy, but also the most impact on the community. Norwich Police Department. And these are some of the ones that were added since July presentation. Deputy Chief Porter, you just want to talk a little bit about the $300,000 for a few moments? You did turn that on.
Is it on?
How are you? My name is Corey Ford. I'm the Deputy Chief of Norwich PD. The $300,000, $258,000 of that would be to replace 3 lost officers in the current budget. So that would bring us up to full staff at 88 officers. The additional $50,000 we would use towards overtime to address the ongoing gun violence that's happening currently, and that's attributed to a local gang and a New London gang. And that seems to be going back and forth. And these are daylight shootings with no regard to anybody or anything. You saw the one that happened just yesterday. So it's getting kind of scary. We really need to address that. And that $50,000 would go a long way. That would go directly to the detectives. It would be proactive enforcement of known gang members. And then that would allow us also to use towards or with the federal government, because they come in and they work a program with us to address it from the top end down. So.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Poor. The next is Otis Library, and do you want me to just briefly, or you want to go over it a little bit?
Go ahead, John. Brevity's
Okay.
not my friend.
Well, this is a supplement to the budget. Actually, it brings the budget up to last year plus another $25,000. And the city felt that that was a small investment that really impacts a lot of citizens. A lot of citizens use the library for all types of services, basic services, internet access, items like that, language integration into the society, a host of great programs. So we think that that 50 is going to be leveraged very well, and we're glad to propose it to Otis Library.
You couldn't have done it as quickly and decisively.
Yeah, flattery will get you everywhere. Yeah. Oops, that'll be that. The next, I'll take these last few. In the budget, there was an elimination of a assistant zoning and blight officer. Well, this is really for quality of the city, and a very important project. Goes hand in hand with our housing, and is feedback? Well, how do I do that?
Yeah, put the other one down.
Oh. Oh, that's right. I got it. I just want to hog all the microphones, isn't it? So this will go a long way to helping eliminate blight and addressing it. And it goes hand in hand with the items that are listed in the beginning of the presentation. So we're very excited to have the opportunity to put this in. We will replace it with the general fund budget in subsequent years. So this is maybe a 1 or 2 year interim situation to get us back on our footing. Oops. And then finally, there's $500,000 that was proposed, I believe, by Councilor Wilson. It'll probably be assigned to Leanne Gomes' department. And you mentioned it, I think, already a little bit. And it's $500,000 for specific neighborhood revitalization programs to be determined. We have not determined all of them, but we've reserved a substantial amount of money to go towards it. All totaled, almost $9.8 million. This first round of money, this first year, there's about $4.8 million. So you see that we have another about $5 million left. That will be allocated over the next month or two. Some of the things that come up tonight and in the subsequent weeks by the citizens and by other staff and council will be part of that $5 million. And then, of course, we get to do this all over again next year, which is terrific. We get another $14.8 million. There'll be some projects that are the same. There'll be others that are different. There will be some that will pivot onto what we have with this and go forward. So all that is the program in a nutshell. I'm going to turn it back over to the mayor now, and I assume you're going to run it 3 minutes so we give everybody a chance to speak who wants to speak. We have about a half an hour.
Thank you, John. I'd also make note, at 7:30, we'll convene the council meeting. The first half hour is devoted for citizen comment on any subject matter. So I would invite people who may not speak in the next half hour to join us again and continue talking about this plan if you wish, or any other subject, so that we try to get a full hour in as we had discussed. At this time, I'd open the microphone. Is anyone who'd like to speak? I just ask you to raise your hand. I'll recognize you. I'll go back and forth both sides of the room. Again, please identify yourself with your name and address, and each person will have 3 minutes. And yes, please, go right ahead.
Hello, I'm Julie Cagle. I emailed all of you this week. The first thing I'm going to talk about, so you know my concerns about the rec department, and I'm hoping you're willing to support them. So I made a number of points in the email. First of all, they do need, and I fully believe that the community engagement coordinator would be such a positive thing for the city here. So I hope you consider it and fund it. We are so lucky to be able to have this money. I know we're a city that got more than many others. Also, one of the things I feel about, I participated for, oh my gosh, a year or so on the community center after, we lost the Y and so on and so forth. And we worked many hours researching and going around. And one of the things that we did come up with, the bottom line was an aqua center here in Norwich because we lost the pools at the Y. And I know that they're proposing a splash park, which I'm also a proponent of. However, if more can happen, but that's a good step right there. And so I know I've been here before talking and supporting the rec department because we tend to be the ones that get cut during the lean times. So now that you have this opportunity with some funds, I hope you consider really funding the rec department because really, if you think about it, in our community, the citizens, that's what they really see their tax dollars going for. I mean, that's what impacts them the most. What can they do? How are they serviced here in the city recreationally? I heard the presentation, so I'm going to throw in a couple of other things. The Uncas Leap Heritage Park, anything we can do, we are a gold mine for tourists. However, we are just not pulling it together. So anything that can be done to kind of cultivate that only helps businesses here. I've been part of the Thames Heritage River Park down in New London, and it's taken us a few years to grow, but this year is probably, and then of course we had the pandemic in between, but this year it has really been, we've seen the growth bringing things into New London. So if we can use some of these funds to help support the tourism here, that can only benefit the businesses of Norwich. And, I'm going to throw this one in too. Habitat for Humanity, I can't be more of a proponent for that. If you drive around, there's buildings here. If they can fix them up, like you said, sell them as is, then they stay as is. If you can get humanity, the Habitat for Humanity involved, it's really a very good situation. I work with a young woman who got one house in New London, and it really helped her neighborhood and her community. So all of those three, rec department, anything you can do for tourism, and the Habitat for Humanity, if you can use those funds, it'll only make Norwich better. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Beryl Fishbone.
I was planning to speak during the council meeting for the open session. It was an interesting tonight because when I looked up what the American Rescue Plan was, there were priorities that were listed. Rescue efforts leading to community recovery, provided other dedicated grants and programs are in place before ARPA funds are used and used for priorities not eligible for other federal and state assistance programs. The other eligible uses included revenue replacement for the provision of government services up to but not exceeding the revenues collected in the previous fiscal year prior to the declaration of the public health emergency. Expenditures and negative economic impacts that include assistance to small businesses, hard-hit industries, home businesses, households, and economic recovery. Premium pay for essential workers, investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. I didn't realize that it would just be used for a continuation of the programs that were already in place and not new, novel, or different. I also, when you talk about tourism and bringing people to the city, Mohegan Park was not mentioned. And we all know that we've put in the disc golf course, and it's been a wonderful success. And it has been bringing tourists even during the health crisis, because it's a safe thing to do, both for small groups and individuals. It's also pretty cheap. You can get one of those, the golf discs for 10 bucks, which makes it good for our youth and for our adults. We're looking for $40,000 so that we can expand it and put in another 9 baskets. Didn't hear a mention. Didn't hear a mention of resurfacing the basketball court up in Thamesville. Maybe even putting in a playground up there. Not one peep. To say that I'm disappointed puts it mildly. I have a letter for you because I thought, oh, this is going to be great. We'll have some new projects, some new ideas, things that we haven't done before, haven't had the opportunity to do. Not just the same old stuff. Putting money in the same places. Maybe effective, maybe not. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know. Yeah, yes, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Carolyn Turner. I live at 281 Norwich Ave in Taffville. I have a few points I wanted to make. Some I came with already, some I've emailed you about, others I picked up as I was listening to our city manager's presentation. One of the biggest things that sticks out to me about this ARP money is areas that are located in qualified census tracts. We have Jenkins Park, which money is being planned to be allocated there, which I thank everybody who is in support of that for. As I'm vice president, co-founder of Night Flight Basketball League, and we utilize those parks, or that park specifically. However, the funding of that park to better it doesn't just serve Night Flight, it serves everybody who lives in that underserved, privileged, low income, moderate income. The amount of kids who come to Jenkins without Night Flight going on is huge. So that money is just gonna draw in more children. The park's gonna become probably safer as it'll be more lit at nighttime. Let's see, my other point is I'm also on the board of directors for Norwich Youth Football League. The president, Derek Smith, is here, so I'm gonna let him talk about his talking points. But it wouldn't be right if I didn't stand up and advocate for Jennings Field as well, seeing how, again, so many children that live in these qualified census tract neighborhoods utilize the service of NYFL. Again, I'm gonna let Derek talk about the needs of that. I'd also like to make a suggestion for the splash pad that it be located at Jenkins Park, if not across the street. Maybe reallocate some of the usage of the tennis courts that nobody uses and will definitely not use, I'm sure, once the tennis courts by the recreation department are fixed. I'm in full support of the recreation department receiving a community engagement coordinator, somebody that can be Cheryl and Bob's go-between in the midst of them trying to create programming and working with that community engagement officer based upon the wants and needs that they've learned of the community members. I hear about infrastructure money, and I would like to definitely be made aware of how this new infrastructure bill that is going, or is passed rather, is going to affect some of the money that's possibly being allocated out of this American Rescue Plan money. Hopefully, the monies will be able to be reallocated, possibly back to recreation. I am huge with supporting the arts. My good friend LaShawn Cunningham is here. She's the director of Blooming into Greatness, another grassroots organization that was based upon a need that wasn't necessarily being answered for the youth of this city. In response to the shooting that took place on Lake Street and to Captain Poor's speech, it kind of led me to think about maybe in addition to the Norwich Police Department's request, to maybe request intervention monies for at-risk youth for gang involvement. It could be a collaboration of the community policing unit, formerly involved individuals, mental health workers, and those affected by gang violence. We have to intervene before we consider locking everybody up. And I'm not saying let the people that are currently shooting go free, absolutely not. But I think a lot of these children would be better off if they had help in advance. And of course, my last point would be, which I'm sure you're going to get beat in the head for a lot, is the community center. Our kids need an outlet. And actually, I lied. I have one more. NCDC President Kevin Brown had stated that the purpose of the ARP money is to restock the till. Well, you've had these grassroots organizations such as, again, Blooming into Greatness, Norwich Youth Football League, Night Flight Basketball League, Bully Busters, who don't necessarily receive a lot of community support or city or state support. Our tills need to be restocked as well because we were able to provide services during COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir, please. Is it Derek?
Good evening. My name is Derek Smith. I'm the president of NYFL and living at 11 Anna Street in Norwich. And just want to take this time to speak on things that may need to be assisted with at the Norwich Youth Football, such as the lights. The lights have been there since we established the whole program, so we were just thinking that maybe game lights and practice lights could be upgraded. Also, increased parking. We need more increased parking. I know with the water, the water levels, it may be a difficulty, but having increased parking would help as far as when we have games and so forth. Also, announcer booth could be updated for us. Also, some landscaping as far as the trees. We have a lot of foliage that's coming over, the lights and so forth that we can have removed. Also, bathrooms would be beneficial. We have the porta potties at this time, but if we can get some bathrooms installed, I think it would be a nice upgrade. And also, artificial turf was also spoken of with the rec department, just as far as easier upkeep, as far as with the rec department. And at this time, just want to thank you for coming out to help us out this weekend for trying to remove our goalpost to help us with our season this year. But those are just a few things that I wanted to mention on as far as the NYFL to upgrade so it'll benefit our kids. We're moving into a new football league this year, so we just having upgrades, which you're helping us with. But I think with these other things that I mentioned, it would help with the league and also with when we have other participants come and visit the Norwich neighborhood. And That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and you're most welcome. Other speakers? Yes, please.
Good evening, members of the City Council. For those who do not know me, my name is Michael Podsley. I am president of the Norwich Firefighters Local 892, 27 Whitebrook Drive, Brooklyn. 520, that's how many days have passed since the COVID-19 pandemic state of emergency started back in March 13th, 2020. 12,480, that is how many continuous hours City of Norwich firefighters and police officers have been on duty since this pandemic started. Since March 13th, my firefighters have responded to 3,173 calls for emergency. At every single one of those responses, my firefighters were in our city streets in direct contact with the public and presumably the virus. Mind you, those very same streets where the Uncas Health District reached a point in which they could no longer keep track of all the positive cases and finally directed us as emergency responders to just treat every emergency response as though the virus is everywhere, in every residence and business. Throughout all those continuous hours up to this very second, my firefighters and fellow police officers of this great city remain loyal to our duty of protecting the citizens, visitors, and property within this city. Council members, it pains me to now stand here before you expressing the concern of Norwich's bravest and finest. But the very unfortunate reality is that this city and its leadership officials have not held up their end of their responsibilities, and in doing so have not been loyal to any of us. Since the start of the pandemic, members of the Norwich Fire Department have received hundreds of documented exposures and potential exposures to COVID-19. Unfortunately, through some of these exposures, a few of my members became ill and subsequently tested positive for COVID-19. Let me cite a quick example. One firefighter became sick and COVID positive just a few days after performing the act of CPR on an unresponsive patient. We all remember it very clearly that during these early months of this pandemic, gatherings of any size were non-existent, as was the thought of any vaccine. So it's safe to bet and presume that this firefighter got sick at that emergency scene. This firefighter was then forced by departmental policy to use their own personal time to quarantine out of work from an illness that in all probability was received on the job in the act of performing life-saving interventions on a resident of this city. Also, be mindful that during the early months of this worldwide pandemic, personal protective equipment that was meant to be one-time use was being used multiple times on multiple incidents by my firefighters. Now, the term frontline worker has been thrown around a lot this past year and a half. Let me ask all of you on the City Council, what is a frontline worker? It would seem as though firefighters and police officers would be at the top of any rational individual's list. Certainly, the on-the-job actions of the firefighter I just described would be a fitting description for the duties of a frontline worker. Well, in this city, it doesn't seem as though that is quite the rationale. To further this thought, the employees of Norwich Public Utilities were each given 80 hours of emergency paid sick leave. This leave could be used for sickness and/or mandatory quarantine for potential sickness. This 80 hours of leave was to be subtracted from the sick leave balance of public utilities before any other earned leave. By no means am I discounting the service level provided by Norwich Public Utilities and the performance of all its great employees. But the last time I checked, members of public utilities are not responding and interacting with sick individuals who call for help because they are sick. Meanwhile, firefighters and police officers who do not have the ability to work from home, as most employees of Norwich Public Utilities did, are continually placed in these situations during the performance of their duty on a daily, if not hour-by-hour basis, just to be tossed to the wayside being told, we could have gotten sick elsewhere. To further exacerbate our frustration, City Manager John Solomon, at the beginning of the pandemic, with zero explanation to any of us, chose not to partake in federal CARES Act funding, which would have directly reimbursed the city and subsequently its frontline workers for expenses related to COVID-19. Now you sit here in front of all of us discussing ways the city should spend $30 million of American Rescue Plan funding. To reference the precise wording found in the U.S. Treasury American Rescue Plan, you can find on page 4,184, it states examples of eligible expenditures of the American Rescue Plan include payroll expenses for public safety, public health, healthcare, human services, and similar employees whose services are substantially dedicated to mitigating and responding to the public health emergency. I'm standing before you not asking for a handout. What I'm respectfully requesting is that this city support its frontline workers. Take a mere 1/1000th of that $30 million to cover the responsibility you have of your frontline workers while we continue doing our job. I am unwilling to sit back and cast my firefighters and fellow police officers aside waiting for the city's responsibility and loyalty to begin.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else like to speak during the informational? Has not. Please.
Good evening, Brian Koblars, 16 Hobart Avenue. First thing I want to say is, when you come up with this thing for the vote, I'm going to recommend that you split it. You've got different projects here. They should be split and considered individually. Stacy, keep your seatbelt on. You made some very good comments a couple weeks ago insofar as the necessity for speed to get some of this out there. I fully agree. There are parts of this that need to be there yesterday, not in a month. So let's concentrate on getting those passed. Second, some of the things we need to look at. John, you did not address some of the key things that are in the requirements. Those being the things for healthcare workers. Those being the things for small businesses. Small businesses in this city got hit real bad with this. And so far, there has been nothing within any of the programs to cover a home-based business until this one, which is specifically named in the language. And yet, the pie in the sky projects, the favorite sons, get mentioned and the others do not. I need to agree with the speaker a couple back, I don't know her name, but she said, when she talked about refilling the till, absolutely correct. There are some of the programs out there that ended up suffering because of the health crisis. They're the ones that need it. If you want to talk about refilling the till with the revitalization bond, let's look at some of the language. May recipients use funds for general economic development or workforce development? Generally not. And it goes on from there. This is not meant to refill the till for something that did not have an adverse impact from COVID-19. The revitalization bond went through 10 years. It did not end because of COVID-19. It ended because the time was up on the bond. How do you know if specific things are things that you can use it for? It's in the language. Outdoor parks are not a massive park. I love the idea of Uncas. However, does it fit within this specific language? Is this an outdoor park that suffered because of COVID-19? Is it an outdoor space which they do identify as being something around a restaurant or somewhere else that ends up increasing that access? Those are things that are mentioned in there. Developing a new park is not part of the language. And again, the small business, those need to have support. We need that in there. We need that in there today. You've got a lot of mom and pop shops in the city that are going to be closing their doors before the end of the year. Getting the funding after the fact is not going to help any of them. So there are many, many small things. I was going through hundreds of pages of this material, and I was seeing things in there where this community is lacking those needs that are going to directly affect us in the long term. Those are the ones we need to address today. We can wait on the big projects until we make sure that the needs of the city itself are met. Thank you very much.
Thank you.